After saving his daughter, a wealthy man asks a beggar to be his date for an hour at his ex-wife's wedding. But when the beggar arrives, everyone is stunned. A story about love, family affection and courage is waiting for you to discover. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel so you don't miss the next exciting stories. His 7-year-old daughter, the only source of light in his complex life, gently stroked his hair and whispered, "Joyce, sweetheart, it's time to get up. We've got a big day ahead. Come on, we can't be late for school." Joyce rubbed her sleepy eyes, reluctant to leave the warmth of her bed, and mumbled, "Dad, just 5 more minutes, please. And I don't want cereal for breakfast, okay? And I really don't want to go to your office after school. It's boring." Trying to balance firmness with affection, Jonathan replied, "No cereal today. I made toast with your favorite jam. And as for the office, Haley, my secretary, will pick you up after school. You know you're too young to stay home alone, right? Plus, your babysitter's still sick and can't come. Let's go, Angel. I'll be waiting for you at breakfast." Jonathan's life, despite being one of luxury and success as one of the city's top architects, ran on a precisely scheduled routine. He'd take Joyce to school and head to the office, and his days were filled with meetings, projects, and negotiations that almost always stretched late into the night. Since his divorce from Tiffany, his ex-wife, and the betrayal by Albert, his former business partner Jonathan had poured himself even more into work, often leaving little time for Joyce. Starting his own architecture firm after the painful end of his previous partnership had been a bold but exhausting move. He had to start over, but he was able to regain a few clients who his ex-partner had taken and make new connections in nearby cities. With long workdays that started early and ended late, he rarely had the chance to enjoy time with Joyce. Sometimes he'd have to bring her to his office after school, as he was often too late getting home and worried about leaving her alone. He hadn't even realized another hectic workday was winding down when Haley brought his daughter to his office after ballet practice. Joyce slouched in her chair, sharing bits about school, mentioning her grades, and then asked, "Dad, I don't want to be here in your office, it's so boring. Can I call Mom and go to her place? You can pick me up later tonight. She hasn't called me in a while and I miss her." Jonathan sighed deeply and replied, "Joyce, of course you can call her. She is your mom after all. But I'm not sure she'll have time for you right now. She's always got other important things going on." Joyce's face fell as she slowly dialed her mum's number on her cell. "Hi, Mum. Since it's been a while since you called, I thought I'd give you a ring. Maybe we could go for ice cream. Or maybe I could come over. I miss you." There was a pause before Tiffany, her mother, answered in an uneasy tone. "Honey, not today. I have so much going on right now. You know how busy I always am. If I have some free time this weekend, I'll call you, all right?" Joyce's face grew sad. Her lips puckered in disappointment. Jonathan's heart went out to his daughter. She just wanted some time with her mum, but it seemed her mother had little interest in seeing her. With a wink, Jonathan said, "You know what? I'm taking a break now. Let's go get a big 3-scoop ice cream with chocolate syrup, strawberry sauce and sprinkles. How's that sound?" Joyce's face instantly brightened with a wide smile, and she started chatting about school again. After savoring a giant family-sized ice cream, she opened her notebook and began working on her homework. Meanwhile, Jonathan stepped out for an important work meeting. Not long after he returned, smiling as he found Joyce sound asleep on the office couch, bundled in a pile of blankets. Jonathan brewed himself a strong coffee, settled into his favorite leather chair, closed his eyes, and drifted into his thoughts. He envisioned giving Joyce a life full of opportunities, something he himself never experienced growing up due to the deprivation and sadness that surrounded his upbringing. Jonathan's journey, from his early days to his success as a renowned architect, was marked by overcoming obstacles. He grew up in a troubled family, where love and support were in short supply. His parents were often in conflict, his father absent and consumed by alcohol, and his mother, worn down by work and frustration, couldn't offer any warmth or encouragement. Jonathan, however, possessed a sharp mind and an exceptional talent for design and architecture. From a young age, he stood out in school, especially excelling in subjects that demanded high-level reasoning and creativity. His teachers recognized his immense potential, often praising him for his dedication and skill. Beyond his studies, Jonathan had a hidden passion for sketching buildings and structures. His imagination flowed freely onto paper, where he outlined innovative designs and creative architectural solutions. Despite financial challenges, he entered design competitions, where his projects, even when crafted from basic, affordable materials, managed to shine. But when Jonathan shared his ambition to pursue a career in architecture, his mother dismissed his dreams, claiming they were unrealistic fantasies and insisting he pursue something more practical. "Who do you think you are, wasting time on those drawings? I don't see any future in that. You don't have what it takes. You'd be better off focusing on becoming a doctor or lawyer. That's where you'll really make it," she would say, doubting Jonathan's potential. Despite his family's disapproval, Jonathan remained steadfast in his passion. Determined to change his life, he left his hometown in search of an education and opportunities that could make his dreams come true. It was a tough start, with barely enough money to get by, so he worked as a waiter, a salesperson, and even took on odd jobs as a doorman. At university, he studied architecture with intense dedication, surviving on scholarships and temporary jobs. It was there he met Tiffany, an interior design student with a bright future ahead of her. Ambitious and uniquely beautiful, Jonathan fell for her at first sight. They shared a vision of a successful future together. After graduation, Jonathan and Tiffany married and opened an architectural firm. The business thrived, thanks to Jonathan's innovative vision and Tiffany's eye for aesthetics. Yet, as life is rarely perfect, the relentless routine and responsibilities began to strain their relationship. Tiffany felt neglected, especially after the birth of their daughter, Joyce. Feeling the lack of attention and affection, Tiffany made the sudden decision to leave the firm she and Jonathan had built and sought comfort in someone else's arms. This new phase didn't fulfill her expectations. Though she stayed with Jonathan for their daughter's sake, her heart longed for something more, to reignite her passion. It was then that Albert, her lover, entered her life. They met when Jonathan introduced him as the new partner at the architecture firm after Tiffany had decided to leave the company. Tiffany was drawn to Albert's charming smile and his sharp eye for business. One evening, when they were alone at the office, Albert invited her out to dinner and subtly showed interest in her beyond just business. At first, she reacted negatively, but as the minutes passed, she found herself easing up. Before she knew it, she was in bed with Jonathan's new partner. What began as a fleeting encounter ended with her returning home at dawn, marking her first act of infidelity against Jonathan. From that moment on, Tiffany started meeting Albert more frequently. She made up an explanation for Jonathan, claiming that Joyce was overwhelming her and that she needed some time away with her friends. With these excuses, she was almost never home in the evenings. Her affair with Albert caused her to neglect not only Jonathan, but also her daughter, Joyce. The complicated relationship with Albert took up all her attention, leaving little room for her real family. Meanwhile, Jonathan began to sense that something was off. Nights grew long and lonely, filled with jealousy and resentment. Despite his attempts to have open conversations with Tiffany to understand the changes in her behavior, she denied everything and continued making excuses. The tenderness, warmth, and affection that once filled their family had vanished. Even amidst the pain and mistrust, Jonathan held on to the hope that this was just a rough patch and that they'd pull through, believing in the love he still felt for Tiffany and hoping she'd return to being the loving partner she once was. He resisted the idea of divorce, considering Joyce's well-being and her need for her mother. But when Joyce turned 5, things hit a breaking point. Unable to manage her double life any longer, Tiffany made the drastic decision to leave Jonathan and Joyce, leaving behind only a brief note. "I'm sorry, but I can't live like this anymore. I fell in love with Albert a long time ago, and no longer feel anything for you, Jonathan. I'll be filing for divorce." Jonathan was left devastated. Tiffany's betrayal and sudden departure left a massive void in his life. How could Jonathan explain to Joyce that her mother had left them for someone else? And to make it worse, it was someone he had worked with. The nights were the hardest. Jonathan would struggle to find the words to comfort his daughter, while he himself felt completely shattered. Things only got worse in court. Jonathan discovered that Albert had found a way to transfer most of the company's assets into his own name, exploiting loopholes Jonathan had left open due to the trust he had placed in Albert to manage the business. Thankfully, the house was left to Jonathan and Joyce, a small comfort amid the whirlwind of losses. Despite the betrayal and abandonment, Jonathan refused to let the situation define him. Though he became the target of ridicule around town and in places he once frequented, as if he had been wronged in an almost unforgivable way, he focused on moving forward. Determined to rebuild his life and give Joyce the best life possible, he poured his energy into work and became both mother and father to Joyce, making sure she would never lack for love and care. In search of a new beginning, Jonathan decided to pursue a passion he had set aside, opening his own sustainable architecture firm. With support from old friends and the local community, Jonathan began to see a glimmer of hope. He wasn't just building a new career, he was creating a new home for himself and Joyce, where love and hope could bloom once again. His sustainable projects brought a fresh perspective to the city, which had previously produced mountains of waste. That waste was now repurposed in Jonathan's designs, transforming the city's entire supply chain and construction practices. The mayor even recognized him for his contributions to the community. Over time, Jonathan reclaimed everything he had lost to his former partner, and his wealth grew beyond what it had been. But, like a scale tipping too far, Jonathan began to overlook Joyce as he was consumed with work, trying to make up for the hurt and damage caused by his destructive past relationship. One afternoon, while Jonathan was giving his all to provide Joyce with the love and care he himself had longed for in his childhood, he found himself wondering how he could change this situation. A knock at his office door startled him as he was deep in thought. Rising to answer, he took one last look at Joyce, who was still peacefully asleep on the couch. Shortly after, Joyce woke up, rubbing her sleepy eyes, and started working on her homework. But it wasn't long before boredom crept in. She glanced out the window, yearning for a bit of excitement away from the small confines of her dad's office. Fueled by a sense of adventure, Joyce decided to slip out while her dad was distracted. She wandered through the streets, taking in the hustle and bustle around her until a park across the street caught her eye. With swings, slides, and monkey bars, it looked like the perfect spot for a little break. Without a second thought, Joyce dashed toward the park, eager to enjoy a few moments of fun before heading back. But her short escape was suddenly interrupted when the screeching brakes of a car pierced the air, and a firm hand yanked her back to the sidewalk, saving her from a close call. Frightened and with tears welling up, Joyce looked up to see the concerned face of a stranger, a disheveled woman with tangled, unkempt hair. "You need to be more careful crossing the street, little one," the woman said softly. "It was close, but don't cry. You're safe now. What's your name?" Still trembling, Joyce sniffled and replied, My name's Joyce. Where's your mom, Joyce? Why are you out here alone? Joyce hesitated before saying, My dad's working in that building. I just wanted to play a little. He's going to be so mad at me. Seeing the fear and innocence in Joyce's eyes, the stranger gave her a gentle smile and held out her hand. It's okay, Joyce. Let's go back together, before your dad even realizes you were gone. When Jonathan returned to the office, he noticed Joyce wasn't there. Panic set in as he began to blame himself for letting her out of his sight. He searched frantically throughout the building, checking rooms, offices, and bathrooms, but there was no sign of her. Joyce was always careful about asking for permission to leave, and she usually went with Haley, his secretary. Still shaken, Jonathan called Haley to help him search for Joyce. When they stepped outside, they saw her walking with a poorly dressed woman who looked like she might be homeless. Confused, Jonathan rushed toward them, shouting, "Who are you? What are you doing with my daughter? Step away from her right now, or I'll call the police." But Joyce quickly interrupted her father. "Dad, don't yell. This lady saved me. A car nearly hit me on the street. I didn't see it. I'm sorry, but thank goodness she was there to pull me back onto the sidewalk. Please don't be mad at her. I'm sorry too. I promise I'll never go out alone again." Jonathan hugged his daughter tightly and said, "Joyce, my love, you scared me so much. Don't ever do that again. Do you understand how dangerous that was? You're the most precious thing in my life. I can't let anything happen to you, my angel." Then Jonathan glanced at the stranger, feeling a bit ashamed for his rude response. "Ma'am, please forgive me. I shouted without understanding what had happened. Thank you so much for saving my daughter. I stepped out of the office for a moment, and when I came back, she was just gone. I'm forever grateful to you." He pulled out some cash from his wallet and tried to offer it to her, but the woman firmly declined, replying, "No, sir, I don't need your money. Thank you. But I helped out of kindness, with no expectation of anything in return. If you really want to help me, I'd like a job. That would feel like true repayment. I'm ready to do any kind of work. I just want a fresh start, you know? I can't keep living like this." She finished, her voice heavy with sadness as she looked down. Seeing her struggle, Jonathan paused, considering her words. He quietly called Haley, his secretary, and said, "Why don't we hire her? With the increase in projects, it could be helpful to have another person around to handle clients. What do you think?" Haley frowned and muttered, "You're the boss, so we'll do whatever you say, but I'm not a fan of this idea. She could start stealing or doing drugs on the job. I don't trust her. Look at how dirty she is." "You're right," Jonathan replied thoughtfully, "but let's still give her a trial period of a month or two. She saved my daughter. She deserves a chance." Turning back to the woman, Jonathan asked, "Young lady, what's your name? Do you have ID? Are you ready to start working as an assistant in our office?" "My name is Laura. Yes, I have my ID with me. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's exactly what I need. I'm ready to begin whenever you say. I'll do my very best, whatever you ask of me. You can count on that. Pleased to meet you. I'm Jonathan, the lead architect in the Office of Architecture and Sustainability. You'll be working with my secretary, Haley. Be back here tomorrow at 8. She'll explain everything to you and supervise your work, all right?" Laura began working in Jonathan's architecture office as an assistant. She was dedicated, polite, and always presented herself in a professional manner. With her first paycheck, she bought some new clothes, got a haircut, and rented a small room, grateful for the chance to start fresh. She also developed a close relationship with Joyce, Jonathan's daughter, who trusted Laura and shared her happiness and struggles with her. Laura cherished these moments with Joyce. 3 months later, Jonathan was pleased with Laura's performance, appreciating her diligence and willingness to help. However, despite Laura's spotless record, Haley, Jonathan's secretary, was uncomfortable with Laura's presence, especially with how close she was becoming to him. Haley had long harbored secret feelings for her boss, and since his recent separation from Tiffany, she saw an opportunity to step into his life as his new partner. Seeing Laura excel, Haley perceived her as a possible threat. She devised a plan to frame Laura and force her out. One day, when Haley asked Laura to retrieve certain documents, she created a scene, accusing Laura of snooping where she didn't belong. "Jonathan, we have a problem. I left Laura alone for a moment, and she started looking through confidential files. What if she plans to sell them? I think you should consider letting her go. I warned you about the risks of hiring someone like her. And look, it's happened," Haley hinted. Jonathan, taken aback by the accusation, confronted Laura, who flatly denied it. "I haven't stolen anything. If you don't trust me, I'd rather leave than be falsely accused. I don't want to end up blamed for something I didn't do or, worse, thrown in jail," Laura stated firmly. Jonathan believed in Laura and promised to look into the matter thoroughly. He then decided that Haley should take some time off while they got to the bottom of things. This infuriated the secretary, as her scheme had clearly backfired. That same day, Jonathan's daughter happened to be in the office and had witnessed Haley's behavior firsthand. The little girl spoke up, revealing the truth to her father. "Dad, Laura is innocent. I saw Haley messing with the documents. She wanted to frame Laura just because she doesn't like her. I saw everything." Joyce continued, "I was under the table when I saw Haley calling Laura over to mess with the documents, and then she started yelling at her." Jonathan thanked his daughter, saying, "Thank you, Joyce. Do you remember when this happened? You're my little detective now. You helped solve a tough situation. I'm so proud of you." Relieved and grateful for Joyce's intervention, Jonathan checked the security footage, which confirmed Laura's innocence. He then confronted Haley with the evidence. "Why did you do this? You've worked with me for so long. What was your reason?" he asked, visibly disappointed. After a long pause, Haley finally sneered, "Because she's a dirty, worthless nobody. I thought I'd teach her a lesson." Her response infuriated Jonathan, who was astounded by the audacity of someone he had previously trusted. Haley was immediately fired, and Jonathan turned to Laura, who thanked him again for believing in her. "Jonathan, thank you so much for not letting me go. I really didn't do anything wrong. I'm just starting to get back to a normal life, and I know I may not look like I belong yet, but I'm working hard to fit in." In response to her gratitude, Jonathan experienced a moment of deeper connection and dared to ask, "Excuse my curiosity, but there's something I just can't stop wondering. How did you end up on the streets? You seem like anyone else. No trace of drugs or alcohol. How did it happen?" How did it all happen? Laura then opened up to Jonathan, sharing the journey that had led her to the streets and how rescuing Joyce had given her a fresh purpose in life, saying, "It's hard to explain. My life has always been a series of ups and downs. I grew up without knowing my mum, and my dad was deeply into drinking. Despite all that, I thought I had a pretty regular childhood, even though our house always smelled like alcohol and cigarettes. My dad would bring different women around too, which pushed me away from any interest in drinking. After finishing school, I enrolled in a community college, landed a few jobs, and put a lot of effort into starting my own business, reaching a fair bit of success. I met a man who seemed like the perfect partner, but after we got married, he betrayed me in the worst way, taking off with all my money. All of a sudden, he was gone, taking everything we had, leaving me with nothing. I had no choice but to let go of my dreams and shut down my business. The money ran out, and I lost my home. It's hard to describe how I felt, but saving your daughter lit a spark of hope in me. It gave me the strength to start wanting to rebuild my life. Now I'm working on getting back on my feet, trying to find my way back to normalcy. My goal is simple: to have a regular life, start a family, have kids, and in some way, give back to society. Jonathan listened intently before speaking. It's interesting. Our stories have so much in common. I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional family myself. My childhood wasn't great, and I don't even like thinking about it. My wife left me too and ran off with my former business partner. Not only did he betray me with her, but he also took a big portion of the fortune I had worked so hard to build. Joyce still misses her mom, but it seems like Tiffany forgot she even has a daughter. The last time she came to see Joyce was over 3 months ago. But as you can see, I managed to overcome all those challenges, and I'm sure you will too. The most important thing is that you already have the will to change, and that's what matters. Over time, Jonathan and Laura grew closer, working together, growing and prospering in the office. However, a new challenge suddenly appeared in Jonathan's life. One morning, he found himself faced with something unexpected, an invitation from Tiffany, his ex-wife. But it wasn't just any invitation, it was for her wedding with Albert, his former business partner. The shock of that alone was enough to throw him off, but there was more. Minutes after receiving the invitation by email, a major Chinese investor called Jonathan, informing him he'd be in town for the wedding and would like to meet up to discuss business opportunities. This could be a huge career move for Jonathan, but it also meant confronting a painful part of his past. On the call, the investor surprised Jonathan by saying, "Hey Jonathan, hope you're doing well. I'll be in your city for the wedding. How about we use the chance to catch up? It's great to see that despite the divorce, you and your ex-wife still keep things friendly. Remember, my trip is specifically for this wedding, and I'll be heading back right afterward. So can I count on you to be there?" Jonathan was at a loss. The thought of facing Albert, smugly marrying his ex-wife, felt humiliating, but he couldn't miss the chance to talk to this potential client. The investor, a powerful owner of several construction firms, promised a contract worth millions, which would give Jonathan's business a huge boost and benefit his local community. Without much thought, Jonathan replied, "Sure, I'll definitely be at Tiffany and Albert's wedding. See you there." After ending the call, Jonathan, still in disbelief, checked his email inbox again. Sure enough, there was the wedding invitation. He wondered, why would Tiffany invite me to this wedding? She doesn't even get along with Joyce. Was she planning to humiliate him in front of everyone? Or maybe she was trying to make peace and mend things with Joyce. Maybe she'd even set up this meeting with the Chinese investor to ensure he would attend. Tiffany knew him well. She knew he'd never turn down a meeting with an important investor. Either way, he knew he couldn't miss this wedding. Of course, Jonathan didn't want to go. He could already picture Tiffany's satisfied look alongside her former partner, Albert, while he still hadn't found anyone new. It would have been much better to show up with a girlfriend on his arm. But where was he going to find one in a week? So, Jonathan decided to ask Laura for help. Probably, she was the only person who could help him out of this jam. When Laura walked into Jonathan's office the next day, he greeted her with a bit of embarrassment and said, "Laura, you once told me that if I ever needed help, I could count on you, right? Well, I really need your help now more than ever." Without hesitation, Laura replied, "Of course. Just tell me what I need to do, and I'll help you however I can." Jonathan then laid out the entire situation with a potential client, ending with a surprising request. "Please, pretend to be my girlfriend just for the day. It would mean so much to me, and it could have a really positive impact on a lot of people's lives. Just for one day." Laura looked at him, surprised, and took a moment to think it over. "Look, Jonathan, You know I'd do anything to help. But the guests are going to pick up on the fact that I don't fit in with their circle, and that might make things worse." But Jonathan reassured her confidently. "Don't worry about that. We won't stay long. I just want my ex-wife to see me with someone else, to realize what she gave up when she left me for Albert, and to understand how important Joyce is to me. Plus, being at this event is critical for landing this client, which could do wonders for our firm and even our community. You won't need to say much. Just being by my side will do the trick. I'll get you an incredible dress and come up with a believable story about us." They carefully planned their appearance at the wedding, with Jonathan hoping his time with Laura by his side would make Tiffany reconsider her choices and also secure a new business opportunity with the potential investor there. The big day finally arrived. The wedding drew a large crowd to an upscale restaurant packed with notable figures from society. Jonathan entered, hand in hand with Laura. Their harmony was undeniable. Laura wore an elegant dress that highlighted her figure, paired with heels that accentuated her posture. Her hair, styled to perfection, added a graceful touch to her look. Jonathan, dressed in a tailored suit, looked dignified and confident. As they walked through the room, heads turned, and people whispered approvingly, admiring the image of such a perfect pair. After greeting the guests, and eventually the bride and groom, Jonathan approached Tiffany with a mysterious smile. "Congratulations on the wedding. May this union bring you both the happiness you're looking for. Here's a gift from us, from me and my fiancée, Laura," Laura added with a playful glint in her eyes. "Congratulations, Tiffany. Congratulations, Albert. We hope you find the happiness that Jonathan and I share. I still can't believe my luck in finding someone as extraordinary as him." Tiffany, taken aback by the revelation, watched the couple return to their table with a mix of surprise and jealousy. She stared at Jonathan and Laura with an inquisitive look, wondering, who is she? Tiffany couldn't hide her annoyance as she thought, "I figured Jonathan would be heartbroken after our split, but it seems he found someone else in no time. Who is this woman, and where did she come from? I'm going to dig deeper. There's no way this is happening. I've never seen her before." For Jonathan, the satisfaction was clear. They had succeeded in affecting Tiffany, just as planned. At the start of the celebration, everything was going smoothly, and Jonathan even had the chance to chat with a potential client interested in sustainable projects. But the evening took a sharp turn when Tiffany, visibly upset and tipsy, decided to cause a scene. Grabbing the microphone impulsively, she announced to the guests, "I have something to say to everyone. I just learned something shocking about Jonathan's new love. She's not who she says she is. Laura isn't some successful businesswoman or high society figure. She was homeless before Jonathan decided to take her in. Now, she works for him as his assistant. Haley, Jonathan's former secretary, told me everything over the phone just minutes ago. I don't want this person at my wedding. I'm scared of what she might do. Please, get them out of here." The revelation caused an immediate buzz among the guests, who shot curious and critical glances toward Jonathan and Laura. Visibly uncomfortable, Laura whispered to Jonathan, "I knew this wouldn't end well." Laura then rose from the table, walked to the stage, took the microphone from Tiffany, and spoke clearly. "I'm leaving now, but before I go, I want everyone to know something. Whether a person is rich or poor, the most important thing is to be a decent human being, and it's not right to talk about people without truly knowing them. Yes, I'm not some high society woman, that's true. But so what? I've never stolen a single penny from anyone. Tiffany, I'm glad you decided to leave Jonathan and Joyce. They deserve something better." With a heavy heart and an upset expression, Laura headed for the exit, trying her best to hold back her emotions. Jonathan quickly followed her, as he had no desire to stay there either. A speeding truck suddenly struck Laura as she was walking outside the restaurant. She fell to the ground, and a red stain started forming beneath her head. Jonathan yelled for help, and panic spread across the street, and even inside the restaurant, as guests heard his desperate cries. The truck driver apologized, insisting it wasn't his fault, as Laura had stepped onto the road without looking both ways. An ambulance was called, and Laura was rushed to the hospital. Jonathan stayed by her side, holding her hand and crying. "Forgive me, Laura. This is all my fault. Please, Laura, say something. Open your eyes." The paramedics tried to calm him, saying, "Sir, please try to relax. She's unconscious and can't hear you right now. This is a serious situation, and there might be internal bleeding. We can't predict the outcome, but you should prepare for anything." Jonathan sobbed in the hospital hallway, blaming himself for what had happened. He realized just how much Laura meant to him and feared losing her. The doctors performed emergency surgery on Laura, but she slipped into a coma. Her prognosis was uncertain, and the doctors couldn't promise how her body would respond after the accident. Jonathan and Joyce visited her every day at the hospital, speaking to her and reading aloud, hoping that somehow their voices would help her regain consciousness. A few days after the wedding incident, Jonathan received an unexpected visitor at his office. It was Paul, a potential client, who had attended the wedding. "Jonathan, I needed to talk to you, but I'm not sure if you'll believe me. The thing is, Laura, the woman you brought to the wedding looks exactly like my daughter who passed away. I know this may seem far-fetched, so let me start from the beginning. My wife and I married young. We were incredibly happy together. I loved her deeply, but we faced the issue of not being able to have children. Anne had health complications that made it impossible for her to get pregnant at that time. The only option seemed to be adopting from an orphanage, though we'd always dreamed of a biological child. We hadn't considered surrogacy until I met a professor of obstetrics and gynecology who agreed to assist us. We needed to find a woman willing to carry our baby, so we posted an ad looking for a healthy and respectable young woman for a well-paid opportunity. Among the candidates, we chose Cora, a healthy young woman from a small town. We explained our situation, and she agreed to help us, especially since she needed the money to care for her sick child. Everything went as planned. Cora became pregnant and stayed with us, though she would often visit her son. My wife wore a fake belly as we prepared for parenthood, avoiding hospitals, with only the professor aware of our arrangement. When Cora went into premature labor, my wife and I were away on a trip. By the time we returned, Cora was already gone. The doctor handed us the baby, saying he had given Cora the agreed payment. We paid the doctor to keep things quiet and were relieved not to have encountered any problems. We didn't question Cora's sudden departure and processed all the baby's legal documents, paying a hefty sum to avoid further questions. And so we began raising our daughter, Nora, as though she were our biological child. Everyone believed she was ours, and we were incredibly happy. Nora even looked like us. When she graduated, I pictured her becoming a successful businesswoman, maybe even taking over the construction companies. She was healthy, playing volleyball in college, but then she began to experience fevers and nausea, followed by seizures. A tick bite gave her encephalitis during a picnic, and soon our daughter passed away. It was devastating for both me and my wife. Then at a wedding, I saw her, someone who was the image of our late daughter. Can you imagine how I felt? I thought I was hallucinating. At home, I told my wife everything and she was confused. But how could such a resemblance be possible? We decided to hire a detective because I couldn't rest without answers." The man paused, visibly shaken, his hands trembling and voice catching in his throat. He took a sip of water, trying to pull himself together. Jonathan, both puzzled and intrigued, asked, "So, what did the private investigator find out? Is Laura actually related to you?" "That can't be right. She told me she grew up in a dysfunctional family. Her dad was always drunk, and she never liked to talk about her past. She even mentioned she wasn't from around here." Paul continued his story. "It sounds unbelievable, but Laura is actually my biological daughter. Cora had twins. She gave us one of them as per the contract, but she took the other baby back to her hometown because her oldest son was very sick. A year later, despite all the doctor's efforts and the money, her son passed away. That tragedy drove Cora into depression and her husband into alcoholism, which created a hard life for Laura. If I'd known I had another daughter suffering like that, I'd have done everything to get her out of there and raise her with love and care. Now that I've found her, she's in a coma, fighting for her life. I can't thank you enough for standing by her, Jonathan. Don't worry about what others say. I'll deal with that. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to help you." Jonathan, stunned, was trying to process the weight of it all. "I'm glad to know Laura's your daughter, but I blame myself for encouraging her to come to this wedding with me. Now she might die because of me. I want to help her, but I don't know how. The doctors say her chances are slim." Paul responded, "All we can do now is wait," and Jonathan pressed him. "Wait for what?" Paul replied firmly, "Don't worry. We'll do whatever it takes to save my daughter. I'll find the best doctors. She'll be all right, I promise. I'll do everything in my power because now I finally have a reason to live. If she knew her father was here waiting, I think it'd help her wake up sooner." These words struck Jonathan deeply. After talking to Paul, Jonathan went to the hospital and entered her room. Laura was still lying in the bed, eyes closed, monitors blinking around her. He took her hand and squeezed it tightly. Her fingers were cold and motionless. He began to speak softly. "Laura, please, hear my voice. You have to wake up, Laura. Your dad, Paul, recognized you at that wedding and immediately knew you were his daughter. Can you hear me? He's right here for you, praying for your recovery. He's hoping with all his heart that you'll get better. He loves you deeply, and I'm here too, waiting. But not just as your boss, or even just a friend, but as someone who considers you the most cherished person in their life." It was only in this difficult moment that I realized how much you mean to me. How lucky are we to have you in our lives. Please, Laura, open your eyes. We all want this more than anything. You're not alone in this fight, do you hear me?" It seemed impossible, but one of Laura's fingers moved. Moments later, she began to blink. The machines around her started beeping wildly, and Jonathan quickly called for the doctors. The doctor, stunned, said it was a true miracle that Laura had woken up. He explained that the odds of her waking up after so long were nearly zero. But now, here she was, awake, and receiving the best medical care the city had to offer. With everyone's support, Laura gradually improved. At first, she didn't recognize many people. She had to relearn how to speak, feed herself, and eventually, how to walk. Jonathan and Paul never left her side, always there to give her the encouragement she needed, constantly reassuring her that she'd make a full recovery. Even little Joyce joined in, drawing all sorts of sweet pictures for Laura, dreaming of the day they'd chat and walk together again. When the time finally came for Laura to go home, she felt ready to open her heart to Jonathan. During the coma, I felt like I was floating between two worlds, without pain, barely feeling my body, not knowing if I was awake or in a deep sleep. But your words about my dad, your love for me, they pulled me back. They made me realize I had a reason to return, knowing you were waiting for me. But please, tell me, were your words just meant to give me strength? Or did you truly mean them? I've always loved you, but I thought I was too small in your world. A simple architect beside someone with such a bright future. I never believed we could be anything more than we were. But please, be honest with me now and don't give me false hope. With Laura's honesty, Jonathan knew it was time to be truthful. After speaking with his daughter Joyce, who supported him fully, he answered her with confidence. Laura, I swear I feel the same way about you, and I promise I won't let you slip out of my life. Joyce and I need you now more than ever. Be the mother and wife in our family. From the hospital, let's go straight home together. What do you think? Laura was overwhelmed with emotions. She could hardly believe her joy. Gently she hugged Jonathan, giving him a shy kiss on the lips. She looked into his eyes, and they shared a passionate kiss, pouring all their love and emotion into it. In that moment, they realized they couldn't live without each other, feeling as if fate had brought them together in this very way. But Laura still had an important meeting ahead, with her father. She wasn't quite able to comprehend how strangers had shaped her entire childhood, while her real parents raised her sister without even knowing they had another daughter. Paul picked them up, and they all went to his grand mansion in the city. What Laura saw astounded her. There were gardens, trees, fountains, vases, and various statues of Jesus and marble sculptures scattered throughout. She had never seen anything like it. An older woman, with kind eyes and a warm smile, came out to meet her and wrapped her in a tight embrace. Laura, my daughter, I can't believe it. You look so much like your sister. Even the little freckle under your chin is the same. My sweet girl. Forgive us for not being there for you. We had no idea about you. We were deceived. But I'm so thankful we finally found each other. Laura felt like a little girl again, not wanting the hug to end. No one had ever held her or spoken to her so lovingly as a child. But now, hugging her real mother, she felt a deep sense of peace and warmth inside. She kissed her mother's hand and whispered, I'm so happy you found me and didn't give up on me. My life before meeting Jonathan was so miserable. There were times I didn't want to keep going because I felt like I didn't belong. I don't fully understand it all yet, but I want to make you proud of me, as your daughter. Paul, visibly moved, spoke in a steady voice. Laura, my child, all of this is yours now. We're never losing you again. I'd be honored if you chose to live with us and work in one of our companies. You have a bright future ahead. I'll teach you everything, and soon enough you'll be leading all our businesses. But I noticed you didn't bring any bags. You're not planning to stay with us, are you, my angel? Laura replied, Dad, Jonathan and I love each other, and I've decided to live with him and Joyce. The two of you have become like precious gems to me. But don't worry, I'll be visiting often, so we can really get to know each other better. I hope you understand. Paul warmly hugged his daughter and said, Look, honey, I'm so happy with your decision, because family is the most important thing we have in life. I wish you all the happiness in the world, because I know Jonathan, and I know how strong he is for all he's been through. I also know Tiffany, his ex-wife, a cruel and manipulative person who truly wronged Jonathan, yet he managed to rise above it all, and now he's leading big visionary businesses. He deserves a break. Jonathan needs someone by his side, and I believe you're the perfect person to be his new partner. Our home is always open to you both. We'd love to meet our granddaughter, spend time with her, and play together. From the first day Laura moved in with Jonathan and Joyce, she felt needed in that house. The little girl was happier than ever, finally having a real mother figure. She clung to Laura, following her everywhere, hardly ever wanting to leave her side. Unlike Tiffany, Laura was patient and kind, a great partner for Jonathan. She kept remembering her father Paul's advice, to give Jonathan the support he deserved and be the perfect partner he needed, always by his side. And that's exactly what she did. She was there to support him, offering comfort, love, and a listening ear, always ready with a smart solution to his problems. Jonathan could hardly believe it. Tiffany had never been that way. She had always demanded from him not only love but also money and other material things. Looking back, Jonathan realized he'd been like a servant to his ex-wife's endless demands, and every kind gesture from Laura made him more thankful for the path he'd taken. He finally felt peace and relief now that Tiffany was out of his life, recognizing that he would still be suffering if she hadn't left, especially after her betrayals with his former business partner. Following the scandal of their marriage, Tiffany had a nasty fight with her new husband, Albert, who had once been Jonathan's business partner. Albert, driven by anger and frustration, yelled, "Are you happy now, Tiffany? Look what you did to our marriage. You just had to embarrass Jonathan in front of everyone, and look at the disaster you caused. Why did you invite him without telling me? Well, congratulations. You managed to make him the center of attention, while everyone completely forgot about us." Furthermore, that woman who was with Jonathan ended up barely clinging to life in the hospital because of the spectacle you created to throw them out of the party. Quite a start to your marriage, huh? Now I truly see who you are. Tiffany was left speechless, a hollow feeling settling in as she realized how disastrously her plans had spiraled out of control. Her frustration grew, driving her to drink far more than she usually would, and she fell into a habit of lashing out at Laura in petty, underhanded ways, hoping to hurt Jonathan through her. Ironically, Tiffany was the one who repeatedly suffered humiliation as a result of her own actions. To make matters worse for Tiffany, it turned out that Laura, who everyone thought was just some random drifter, was actually the daughter of a powerful construction magnate. She joined Jonathan and Paul in their work, contributing to innovative projects that quickly gained fame and success, solidifying their reputation in the industry. Meanwhile, Tiffany's relationship with Albert grew increasingly strained. The marriage, which she once thought would be a perfect fairy tale, was deteriorating fast. Albert no longer appeared as charming or attractive to her as he once had. Tiffany began to doubt her decisions, thinking, if he did that to his business partner and friend, what would he do to me? On the other side, Albert was also dealing with his own remorse and anger. He thought to himself, if she could betray her ex-husband so easily, even abandoning her own child, what kind of future would I have with her? Both of them became trapped in a cycle of mistrust and regret, each one questioning whether they had made a terrible mistake in choosing to be together. As their facades fell away, Albert, finally seeing Tiffany's true nature, made the decision to leave her and seek a new beginning far from the city, which had come to symbolize nothing but painful memories for him. With his natural charm and intelligence, Albert quickly managed to rebuild his life and found a new partner who appreciated him. He left without a backward glance. However, Tiffany discovered herself completely alone and destitute because Albert and Jonathan's labor and assistance had supported her entire former life. She experienced extreme desperation and regret as a result of realizing that Jonathan had always been her true love. Tormented by her past mistakes and desperate for redemption, Tiffany began a tireless quest to win Jonathan back, convinced that he held the key to restoring her lost life. She would wait near his office, call him repeatedly, and make every effort to rekindle their connection. But Jonathan, increasingly exasperated, rejected all of her attempts. Eventually, he confronted her directly, saying, "Tiffany, please, stop calling. Stop waiting outside my office. Stop searching for me. I don't have the patience for this anymore. You destroyed everything we once had, and now you want to come back because you feel regret. I'm glad you recognize your mistakes, but reconciliation is completely out of the question. You should have thought about this sooner. Joyce and I are building a new life together with someone who truly values what they have. Please, leave us alone and stop searching for us. Despite Jonathan's firm rejection, Tiffany couldn't accept that their relationship was truly over. Deep down, she clung to the belief that a second chance was still possible. She imagined there was still love, that forgiveness and a fresh start were within reach. In her mind, Jonathan's feelings for her hadn't disappeared. However, when she finally understood that there was no hope of rekindling their romance, Tiffany shifted her focus. She began to demand more time with her daughter, even though Jonathan had never withheld that right from her. Joyce, at first, was delighted by her mother's sudden interest, looking forward to weekends together, dreaming of shared moments that felt like a real connection. One sunny Saturday at the park, Joyce couldn't stop talking to her mom about the happiness she'd found with Laura. Her face lit up as she recounted all the wonderful things Laura had shown her, how to draw, make rag dolls, and how Laura was always ready to listen to her thoughts and worries, always smiling and present. Tiffany, listening to her daughter praise Laura over and over, could feel her emotions boiling over, jealousy and frustration taking hold. In a sudden outburst, Tiffany interrupted, her voice sharp and cutting. "Enough, Joyce. Why do you only talk about Laura? She's nothing but a parasite, a homeless nobody who has no right to be part of our lives. Don't you love me as your mother anymore?" Joyce was stunned, her mother's anger startling her. Fear crept into her voice as she begged to go home, her small face reflecting both shock and sadness. But Tiffany, wrapped in her own pain and jealousy, tried to sway her with a desperate plan. "Joyce, listen, if we get rid of Laura, I can come back home. We'll be happy again. A real family. You don't need her. You have me." Joyce's reaction was one of doubt and alarm. She looked up at her mum with mistrust in her eyes, her voice trembling as she pleaded to return to the comfort and security of her dad and Laura. "Mom, I don't want that. I'm happy with Dad and Laura. Dad smiles more now. He doesn't look sad, and he's always around. I love you, because you're my mum. But I want to go home now. It feels like you don't want me. You never say anything nice, only get angry." The reality of her daughter's words hit Tiffany hard, forcing her to see the mistake of dragging Joyce into her own struggles. Joyce, still just a child, deserved love, reassurance, and protection, not adult problems. Tiffany tried to soften her tone and redirect the conversation, but the hurt and tension lingered. Less than an hour later, respecting Joyce's wishes, they called her father, and Tiffany, though reluctant, brought her daughter back home. Laura, who was in the kitchen and surrounded by the comforting aroma of baking ingredients, welcomed Joyce home warmly. The atmosphere was filled with a sense of love and teamwork. Laura looked at her with a smile, saying, "Hey Joyce, it's so good to see you. I could really use an extra hand here. What do you think about helping me make an orange cake? It's your dad's favorite. We can mix the batter together, and if you help out well, you can even lick the bowl afterward. I'm counting on you. We're a team." Joyce's eyes lit up at the idea, and with a nod, she joined Laura, diving eagerly into the task. Together, they transformed the kitchen into a place of laughter, learning, and warmth. The mixing of ingredients, the spills, and the shared smiles filled the room with joy. Time seemed to slip away unnoticed, and before they realized it, night had fallen. Meanwhile, Jonathan stood nearby, watching the scene unfold, deeply moved by the harmony and care Laura brought to their family. He couldn't help but contrast Laura's warmth with Tiffany's distant, strained relationship with their daughter. How is it that Laura can give so much love and understanding to us, he thought to himself, while Tiffany struggles to connect in any healthy way with her own child? A sense of gratitude welled up in him, thankful for Laura's presence in their lives and the genuine family bonds she nurtured. Meanwhile, Tiffany was at home, grappling with her own internal turmoil, unable to find peace after a tense interaction with Joyce. She sank deeper into her struggles, using alcohol and medication as an escape, all while blaming Laura for her unhappiness and isolation. Tiffany had convinced herself that Laura was the reason for her separation from Jonathan and the growing distance between her and her daughter. This thought fueled her resentment, pushing her further into destructive fantasies, where Laura was no longer in the picture. She failed to see that her own choices and actions were contributing to her misery. In a moment of desperation, after drinking heavily, Tiffany decided to drive to Jonathan's house, her mind clouded with a dark intent. However, before she could follow through on her plan, fate intervened. She lost control of her vehicle and crashed violently into a tree, the loud impact echoing through the quiet neighborhood. The noise jolted Jonathan, Laura, and Joyce, who rushed outside to find a chaotic scene. Tiffany, injured and bloodied, staggered out of her car, her expression desperate as she called out to Jonathan, her voice wavering. "Jonathan, you need to come back to me. I'm the right one for you. Let's leave this manipulator behind and start over, just you, me, and our precious Joyce." Joyce, watching her mother's distress and realizing the state she was in, felt tears well up in her eyes. Quietly, she replied, her voice barely a whisper, "Mum, you're wrong. You've had too much to drink, and you're saying things that don't make sense. I don't want to leave, and I don't want you to stay. Laura's been good to us. Please don't talk about her like that," Joyce pleaded, her voice tinged with disappointment. Hearing her daughter defend Laura only fueled Tiffany's frustration further. Rage overtook her, and she attempted to storm toward them, her anger especially focused on Laura. However, in her intense emotions, she lost her balance, stumbled, and fell hard to the ground. In no time, the sound of sirens filled the air as an ambulance arrived to take Tiffany to the hospital. The severity of her actions and the tragic turn of events that followed, the announcement of her grave condition, shook everyone deeply. Jonathan, though heartbroken, felt a complex sense of relief. This marked a turning point in him, and he became even more devoted to his role as a father and partner. Laura, always steady, stood by Jonathan's side, helping him offer unwavering support to Joyce. Together, they carefully explained the situation to her with compassion and understanding. At Tiffany's funeral, Joyce wept openly, her heart heavy with grief. Yet, through her tears, she came to realize that her mother's choices had ultimately led to this painful end. As the months passed, the bond between Laura, Jonathan, and Joyce grew closer. They found themselves sharing simple joys, like movie nights in the warmth of their living room, where laughter and comfort replaced the shadows of the past. With the loving presence of her father and Laura, Joyce slowly healed from the loss. She started to embrace life with a newfound sense of happiness and hope because of the care she was receiving. They had become a true family, a family rooted in unwavering love, mutual respect, and deep compassion. In this home, there was no room for resentment or bitterness, only warmth, loyalty, and the joy of each other's company. If you found this story touching, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. There are more stories like this that may move you as well. Enjoy watching